Hey guys, it's Greg with Buy the Bootstraps, b2bootstraps.com. It's going to be a movie review of the movie Shazam. Spoilers are probably going to be here, just because talking about the film, my reaction, my daughter's reaction, and my wife's reaction, like just kind of like what we thought about the movie. So I got my phone out here because there's some character names that I don't know who their names are in real life, but anyway. So we went and saw Shazam today, and I gotta say, the movie is really funny, okay? It's super funny. It's exactly what you would think it would be if you took a 14-year-old and then you gave him the powers of like Superman and like how they figure out what his powers are. It's funny. It's really funny. The interactions are hysterical. I'm not the biggest I'm not the biggest fan of comic book movies. I mean, I know we see them, but I usually see them because my daughter, you know, she's 8 years old and she sees the previews and the promos and stuff like that, and you know, she wants to enjoy those, and you know, that's kind of what everyone in her school talks about. And so we usually go to, you know, to the comic book movies because they're for the most part safe for kids, you know. And this one was one that, like, overall, I'd say it's a solid film. All right, there's definitely some things that could be better. There's definitely some things that they maybe could have expanded upon, and I'm sure, like in the comics, they certainly do. But I've never heard of Shazam. Never. I mean, I've seen them before, but I've never like paid attention to. I don't read comics. Sorry, that's the first thing. I don't read comics. I don't know anything about comics. My experience in the comic book realm are basically the Warner Brothers cartoons that came out in the 90s. You know, the Superman, the Batman, you know, that kind of stuff. You know, the Spider-Man things that they did on Fox, and the X-Men. You know, I love that theme song. Anyway, those are the things that, like, that's my experience with comics. You know, when it comes to, like, you know, in-depth analysis and knowing a story, I know nothing, okay? But what's really cool is that this is kind of like, you know, well, it's not kind of, it is an origin story. You know, it's about this boy named Billy Batson, who is a foster child, runs away from, I think, 6 different foster homes, ends up in this one home with his new family, and he's trying to find his mom, who, they explain that, you know, he lost his mom, right? Like, they do this flashback scene where it looks like, okay, I just lost her, all right? So it's a story about this kid named Billy. He gains the power of this old wizard named Shazam, and every time he says the word Shazam, he transforms into an adult version, you know, or I should say an adult body with flight, strength, speed, lightning, you know, all these other things. Like, he's impenetrable to bullets and fire and stuff like that. So he's basically like Superman minus some of the abilities. He doesn't have like the laser eyes, which is funny because they show him them trying to see what his powers are. All right, and so that's cool. All right, all that's cool. The villain is a man named Thaddeus, which I like the actor who played him. I believe the actor was Mark Strong. I like the villain, like I like the actor who played him, and I kind of liked his backstory at the beginning, but honestly, this film kind of suffers from the same problem that a lot of the Marvel movies do, is that the villain is a one-sided kind of throwaway villain. I mean, one thing I will say about, you know, Captain Marvel, you know, I didn't like Captain Marvel, the character, and I didn't like Brie Larson's Captain Marvel, but I will say that the whole villain thing with the Kree and all that stuff, the Skrull, that turned out being very interesting. It was a much different plot than what I thought they were going to go with, and I actually enjoyed that quite immensely. But with this particular villain, his name is Thaddeus, and he as a child had a vision and a dream of going back and meeting this wizard who ends up being the one who gives his power to Shazam. He's apparently the last of 7 mages, and you know, they're protecting the 7 deadly sins. Well, this kid, this Thaddeus kid, when he was a child, was more corrupted with evil than he was good. And he was told by his father and his brother and things like that, that, oh, you're worthless, you won't amount to anything, and blah, 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 blah. So he, as an adult, spends his entire life trying to get back to this realm, this magical realm, to get the power so that he can essentially prove himself. Which is kind of funny, because it's like, dude, you're 50 years old, and you're still trying to prove yourself to your father and your douchebag of a brother, which they even start off in the film just overly douchey. Like, for no reason. Like, Something as simple as like this kid's looking at a magic 8 ball and the brother's just like, oh, you're a loser, you suck, blah, blah, blah. And the dad's like, ah, you're a piece of shit. And I remember I was looking at my wife and going, wow, those are kind of dick guys, you know? And so like there's a car accident that happens and supposedly it happens because this fattiest kid goes to this majestic realm, like in his mind. Like he does it like he's sitting in the back of a car, he goes to this realm, he has all these events that happen, and he like gets transported back to the car, right? And he's trying to get out and go back. Well, he ends up, you know, essentially the father like spins the car out and they get hit by a truck essentially, and the father gets paralyzed. You know, so now it's like, oh, you know, you caused this. This is your fault. You know, so later on in the movie, when he figures out how to get back to this magical realm and releases the evil inside, and he becomes like the villain, you know, the first thing he does is kills his father and brother, which even that seems pretty funny. You know, when he threw his brother out the window of that board meeting, I was actually laughing because it was pretty funny. You know, I wouldn't take young kids to this movie just because there are a couple scenes that happen in this movie that are a little frightening. You know, certainly if they're like under 5 or 6, I'd say, hey, you know, don't do that, or at least watch it first and see if they're, you know, if they could handle that. You know, I know my daughter at 6 could not handle that. It would scare the crap out of her. But now that she's 8 going on 9, you know, not so bad. Anyway, so this Billy Batson kid, you know, kind of getting away from the villain, he gets selected by this wizard to become Shazam, and basically it's because this guy is really old and he's running out of options. Like he doesn't have the time to wait for what they call a champion. So he picks this kid and he gives him his powers, and every time he says the name Shazam, he transforms into this adult version of this kid. But what's funny is that this kid is 14 years old. The adult version is just a adult body. The mindset, though, is still one of a 14-year-old kid. And so they do a whole bunch of shenanigans in the movie that are hilarious. Like they go in and they buy beer, for example, and that scene is hysterical. You know, like I said, there's a lot of humorous parts in the movie. But then they have like this whole foster kid backstory that plays into the movie, and it really is kind of moving. You know, like these foster parents are looking out for the best of these kids, and it's not like, hey, we're gaming the system or something like that. Like, no, they actually legitimately care about these kids. You know, severely. They actually look at them as a family. You know, like the family part of this movie is really pushed heavily, and it's a good thing. I mean, I'm not complaining about that at all. It's actually a really good thing that they're pushing that. You know, you have a strong father, a strong mother, you know, siblings who are not related blood-wise, but they're siblings per se. You know, his best friend and kind of the one that he, you know, kind of bounces off with is this kid named Zachary, which in the movie, or his actual name is Jack Dylan Grazer, I think it is. And he plays Freddy, who is this crippled foster kid, right? He's very talkative and he loves superheroes. He's got a fascination with Batman and he's got a fascination with Superman, which is really cool because they really play off the fact that, hey, even though this is in that realm, like, they let you know for a fact, like the events of like the Justice League and the events of like Batman and the events of Superman, like that actually happened in this world. Like they have action figures of Batman and Superman, you know. And there's a cameo at the end of the movie where Superman actually shows up. Now you don't see him. You just see basically the torso and the body. And he sits down with him to eat lunch in his cafeteria. But it's, you know, they acknowledge the fact that, hey, these characters are in this. So it's the possibility of, hey, that maybe we can have a bigger Justice League movie or shared universe movie of some kind. But I mean, this movie was really good in that regard. In fact, the only thing that I'd say that's wrong about this movie is that it's predictable. I mean, it's very predictable. It's very campy at some parts, like almost over the top cheesy. And then the CGI freaking sucks. I'm sorry. I mean, the Sin characters that this doctor, this Thaddeus villain guy, you know, that he controls, the 7 deadly sins, they look freaking horrible. They look like a PlayStation 2 graphics, you know, CGI. Which, I mean, that's fine, you know, because like I said, the rest of it kind of makes up for it. And honestly, this movie really isn't a superhero movie in the fact that you would expect like Batman or Superman or Wonder Woman or, you know, or Captain Marvel or anything like that. You know, this is more of a family-focused movie that is more of a comedy. You know, he goes, like this Billy Batson guy, Shazam, goes from being kind of a cocky, arrogant loner to developing into, you know, a family-loving individual and respecting and appreciating what he has, and then also coming to grips with his responsibilities of being a superhero, having this power and actually using it. And they play out the dynamics of the family to get to that point. So it's not your typical like, hey, there's a good guy, there's a bad guy, they're gonna duke it out, and that's like the main focus of the film. That was kind of like, hey, we have to have this in here because there has to be some conflict. But honestly, it could have been just that there, and it would have been a solid standalone film as it is. And it is a solid standalone film. The guy who played Shazam, Zachary Levi, I think his name is, he was hilarious. He's made for this role. His costume looks freaking stupid, but he was made for this role. I mean, he really is he's like a kid at heart, And so I would say like this movie is a solid B plus, A minus. Definitely if you got kids, especially around like 10 or 11 or so, take them to it because it's super funny. They would get a kick out of it. As an adult, you can watch it and not have the groans of, oh my God, this is so stupid. Like Norm of the North, for example, or some of the other movies that I've seen with my daughter where I'm bored out of my mind. This was actually enjoyable. Anyway, comment below, let me know what you guys think. If you see the movie, great, wonderful. Check it out. Check out the store, www.btbootstraps.com. I will talk to you guys later.